It's time now for the political analysis of Fromm and Fuller. Al Fromm, former political advisor to President Bill Clinton, and Craig Fuller, former political advisor to both Presidents Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. Craig, I'd like to start with you. There was clearly a decisive victory on Tuesday for the Democrats. No one is undercutting that. The margins were significant. But, as President Trump said, these are all blue states. These were rather predictable, especially given, where we are with the federal shutdown and all this. Should Democrats be almost overconfident about this?
Well,
Could
I
be.
think it's an election that actually does tend to reset the playing field. I find it interesting that suddenly my friendly Republicans were talking about these are all blue states. That talking point got out there right away. That wasn't a talking point before Tuesday, I might add, when Republicans were campaigning for candidates, virtually all of whom lost. Um, and while it's true that the states are blue, they're also overlooking the fact that down ballot, a number of Democrats won that we wouldn't necessarily have expected to win, and they won by higher margins. They're also downplaying the fact that in the exit polls, the approval ratings for Trump are even worse than what we've been seeing in some of the national polls. And in New York City, where he embraced Andrew Cuomo, an embrace I think Mr. Cuomo regrets, his disapproval is over 70%, President Trump's is. So I think that you can't look at this any other way than from a Republican standpoint, this needs to be a wake-up call. If you are a Republican who will seek office next year and you wish to continue to tie yourself up to the good ship Donald Trump, that ship is not doing well, and I think there will be consequences. So you ask, are the Democrats making too much of this? Are they celebrating too much? Maybe, but guess what? I think they're entitled in a sense of not only the victories, but the margin of victory was greater than what people could have expected, to be honest. It also has been said, well, they had, Republicans didn't have the best candidates. Well, that could be true too. By the way, some of the Democrats who got in, you might judge not to be among the best candidates, but still they got swept into office. So it was a big night, I think, for the country. This is the first time since the elections, where Donald Trump got elected in 2024, that voters have gone to the ballot box in enough states, not only here in the East, but also in California with Proposition 50, the measure that allows them to engage in the redistricting process. This is the first time there's really been the ballot box, registering the concerns about the country. I will say one last thing, and I think Al and I have shared for months now, if not longer, the notion that ultimately voters go to the ballot booth thinking about, who understands what I need, who's going to do the best for me when it comes to the economy and their family and food and healthcare. And all this noise about so many other things distracts from what they ultimately care most about. And I think they went into those ballot booths and cast a vote for what matters to them, and the people that really resonated with them were these Democrats who won the other night.
What do you think? I mean, it obviously was a good night, but is it enough to change the momentum of MAGA?
I think this election was absolutely a referendum on Donald Trump. I don't know whether it will change MAGA because Trump seems to always march to his own drummer, and it usually is in a direction that is, in my view, not very good for the country. But there are two ways to look at to show how this is really a referendum on Trump. The first is in who voted. This electorate was very different than the electorate in 2024 and the electorate even in 2022, the last midterm. Those who basically, it was the electorate of the people who came out to march. And the people who voted this time were people who went to the polls with the purpose of beating Trump. A very large percent of them, I think, in New Jersey and in Virginia, we're talking, high 30s or 40%. Their purpose was to beat Trump. The second thing that makes it clear that it's a referendum, and I think Craig referred to this maybe in something he posted on Fromm and Fuller yesterday, the results in Virginia and New Jersey and California, which were the main races in many ways, at least for analysis purposes, because New York is such an anomaly in a lot of ways. And there aren't exit polls on anything else. The results tracked almost to the point Trump's approval ratings. So it's clear. Now, the second thing that I think you may have mentioned Mike Johnson or the Republicans saying that this was only in blue states. Well, as Craig posted this morning on Fromm and Fuller, Democrats won 2 statewide elections in Georgia for public safety or public service commissioners. I think the issue was high energy prices, and this first time since 2000 that Democrats have won a statewide election for that job, and it wasn't close. They both won with over 62%. That doesn't sound like it was a blue state. In Maine, voters voted against an initiative that I'm sure Trump and the Republicans were pushing for voter to suppress the vote. In Mississippi, Democrats won 3 state Senate seats. It's not the biggest deal, and it's, part of it was because of some redistricting to comply with the Voting Rights Act, but it's the first time in 25 years in Mississippi that Republicans don't have a supermajority in the Senate. The point is that this was a nationwide landslide, no other way to say it. Now, how is the electorate different in 2022 and 2024? This is, if you want to think forward, this is really important to understand. It was more educated, it was more liberal, and more democratic. I mean, in both New Jersey and in Virginia, majority of the voters were college graduates. In the electorate in both 2022 and 2024, which were the last presidential and midterm elections, it was 43% college graduates, 57 not college graduates. The Trump electorate, and even in this case, if you looked at the breakdown within that, the deciding votes are usually white college graduates, working class non-college graduates, and the patterns were pretty much the same, but an electorate that has 55% instead of 43% college graduates is going to be much more anti-Trump. And the same was true, I think in both Virginia and in New Jersey, Democrats outnumbered Republicans. That hasn't been the case in the last 2 general elections. Both Spanberger and Sherrill won big among independent voters. So the point is that the electorate was very different. The Trump supporters who were, in 2024, there was a big deal about all the disengaged voters that Trump got out. Well, they didn't come out at all. And just to quickly go over to give you a sense of what I was talking about with the results, in Virginia, Trump was down 59-39, disapproved to approve, 57-42, Spanberger wins. In New Jersey, it was 56 disapprove Trump, 42 approve him. Sherrill won 56-43, almost to the point. In California, Trump's approval rating was 34, 65 disapproved. The redistricting ballot won 64-36, almost a perfect track. So what does this portend for 26 and 28? Here's what it tells me. That 26 and 28 are going to be two different elections, very different elections. The 26th election is going to be the last Trump election, and it's going to be a referendum on Trump if the Democrats allow that to happen. The 28 election will be uh, first election for the post-Trump era and sort of focus on where the parties want to go, the future of the country, take the country in the future. So it seems to me, as a Democrat, it's very important for Democrats to keep the focus on what Trump's doing and to avoid doing things themselves that are going to remind swing voters in these swing districts for 2026 why they sometimes and often, too often, vote Republican. And so that's why you see the Republican strategy out of the box. The election wasn't 6 hours old when the first ads against Mamdani came out. The Republicans want to, their whole strategy is to try to take the attention off of Trump and make Mamdani the face of the Democratic Party. And that's why it's so important for Democrats to make it very clear that the real faces, new faces of the Democratic Party coming out of the National Democratic Party are not some socialists in New York, but these two moderate, attractive Democratic governors who got broad support in the election. Uh, and just one more point, because the uh, whenever elections, when Trump's not on the ballot and elections wind up being about him, uh, they usually don't work out very well for the Republicans. And Democrats need to look at what happened to the Republicans in the Senate in 2022. Okay, the Republicans should have won the Senate. Biden's approval rating was 41%, 56% approved, around the range Trump is now. And the Republicans should have made it an election on Biden, a referendum on Biden. They would have won the Senate easily. But what did they do? They put up candidates like Blake Masters in Arizona, Mehmet Oz in Pennsylvania, Adam Laxalt in Nevada. And these and other election deniers in statewide elections. And those candidates in those races, it wasn't a referendum on Biden; it became a referendum on Trump, and the Democrats won those seats. So I look at that and I say, as a Democrat, we got to be careful. We got to make sure that we clear that fairway so people get a good view of the flag, and the flag is Donald Trump, because we want 2026 to be a referendum on Trump, and we can worry after 2026 about how we define our party for 2028 when we have to actually go to the country with the kind of party we want to be.
Craig, back to you. I mean, does this affect Donald Trump at all? I mean, he will not be running for a third term at this point. He's been indifferent to voter trends for quite some time. What does it all mean for him?
So it's hard to get inside the mind of Donald Trump, and kind of scary to think about it, actually. But the reality for this White House was really summed up very well by Rahm Emanuel, former mayor of Chicago, former ambassador, very, very able Democratic political operative. Al and I have known him for a long time. Um, he said on election night as a commentator, he said, I've been there, and I'll tell you one thing: there is not one person in the White House high-fiving anybody tonight. And I thought, boy, that's true. And it's a very tough place to be inside that White House when the defeats come rolling in, and they came rolling in all night Tuesday night. There was nothing um, to take any joy about inside that White House. Whatever Donald Trump may think, I mean, he thinks because he's using this phrase, because I wasn't on the ballot, we didn't do well. Well, the fact is, his name wasn't, but he was on the ballot. His performance was on the ballot. His record is on the ballot, and it didn't go well at all. And so, while it's important what Donald Trump thinks, but those 10, 15, 20 people around him wake up thinking is also important. And they have to wake up thinking along the very lines that Al was speaking, and that is, how do we hold on to a Republican majority in 2026 with the disapproval numbers as high as they are, with the messaging as chaotic and confused as it is? And is there any hope to get Donald Trump on a consistent message? And I don't. Trump shows no real empathy for other Republicans. I mean, he's telling the Senate leader Thune to get rid of, procedures in the Senate that Thune is not willing to do. He's telling, I think Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, must look at his email every morning and see what his instructions are, and so far it's keep him out of town, and that's not going over well. I I don't look for Donald Trump to change much about the way in which he conducts business, but I think the people around him are going to become ever nervous. And at some point, they begin bailing out. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see
Mhm.
before we go through the election next year, some cabinet members maybe deciding to leave, some White House staff leaving. People begin to engage in this sort of self preservation. And while it's too early to know exactly how 2026 is going to come out, there's a clear sign here that there's trouble ahead for Trump's Republican Party.
Quick, Al, you have the last word.
Well, I just second what Craig said. When things aren't going well in the White House politically, it's a very unpleasant place to be. Craig did it to me, so I know it well because and I was in the Carter White House in 1979 and 1980 when the Fuller Reagan juggernaut was coming to town. It was miserable. That's one of the reasons I didn't want to go back inside the White House when Clinton was president. But yesterday, one of the things that happened was the Supreme Court was hearing the case on the tariffs. And I can't believe that those justices aren't affected as well by what happens in the body politic. And, they've been pretty kind to Trump. And I think in many ways stretched the Constitution to his benefit. He's been defanged a little bit in this election. And we'll see if it has any impact, like on this tariff case. The questioning sure seemed like the conservative justices were going to be hesitant to go along with him on this. Trump's tendency is to when it's clear he's on the wrong course, is to double down and then triple down and then quadruple down. So we'll see what happens. But I think the next year between now and the 2026 election going to be really fascinating because Trump has a lot at stake. People said in 2024 his choices were winning the election or going to jail. And that I don't think he has to worry about going to jail, but he does have to worry if the Democrats win the Congress about either house, about daily investigations of all these crazy shenanigans in an administration that to me has been, uh, you know, uh, basically chaos, cruelty, and corruption. and that's going to give congressional investigators a lot to work with.
Well, we have to leave it there. Al Fromm, Craig Fuller, thank you so much indeed. We will see you next week.